Hi, Tara.
Hi, Vicky.
And hi, everyone. And thanks for joining us today. We have Power Burst number 20 today, and we'd like to share our question with you. How do we approach a relation space that is not necessarily at its best in the moment? What are our best hopes? And what can we do to reset?
Thanks.
Tara, do you want to start us off?
Yes. I think it's such an important question. And I think what's really come to mind is that, we live in a time where there's quite a pressure for relationships to, particularly when you think about social media and things like Instagram and TikTok and thinking about those social media spaces that children, young people and adults are all interacting with, this sort of pressure or this expectation for relationships, relation spaces to be perfect.
Yes.
And that, the reality of humans, of life is that can't always be the case, that there are challenges in our lives. And there can be challenges in our everyday lives. And then there can be bigger challenges, unexpected things that can throw real hand grenades, curveballs into our lives. And, with that, just to think about how we navigate those challenges. How do we reset in the moment? And I think it really brings to mind the sort of possibilities. Sometimes we can be really almost like super organized. Something might happen, some challenge might kind of come into our lives, and it's like, right, how do we want to approach this? What are our hopes? How are we going to be able to navigate this together? How are we going to communicate through this to make sure that we're supporting each other? And how have we managed situations in the past? And that's great. You can really think about almost, planning and really visualizing how you want to manage a situation together. And then there's sometimes where we just don't do that. We're approaching, or we're dealing with a crisis and we're just going head in and just sort of doing it. And within that, there can be those moments where communication or the relation space breaks down. And, so to really think about how do we regulate ourselves in these moments? How do we ground ourselves? And, then the sort of other end, if things we don't manage to do that and communication really breaks down, we start, there can be those times where we're blaming each other and communication becomes really challenging. How do we recover from that? How do we reset then? How do we recover? How do we restore that relationship?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I hear you talking about two really important pieces. One of the pieces is the self-regulation piece, right? Where when things are not going so well in a relationship and we want to be able to engage with the other person, sometimes we'll just be really upset and we will end up, everything will just end up boiling over because we resort to blaming the other person or shaming the other person. And so, those kinds of interactions are certainly not going to shift the relation space or bring hope to the relation space. So in those moments, we need to retreat. We need to recognize that maybe we're not prepared to engage and that we need to self-regulate and sort of ground ourselves before we go back in to have a fulsome conversation. You see, I think that expressing vulnerability in times of struggle is a very important part of that relation space. That when we model vulnerability, we teach the other person that it's safe to model vulnerability and to express themselves openly and that it's okay not to always be at our best, and that it's okay to have those kinds of conversations. But it's only okay to have those kinds of conversations if we can self-regulate and have them in a meaningful way where we're not lashing out at each other. So I do think that those are two very important pieces, is how do we communicate in the relation space, and how do we self-regulate?
Mm.
And I think you're absolutely right. I think this idea that, people wait for the perfect relationship to come along because they think that there is such a thing. Well, there is not such a thing, and all relationships are going to go through challenging times.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, that's so powerful what you share about that sort of, being able to regulate ourselves, being able to be vulnerable. And when you were talking, it really made me think, actually, to sort of say that you're not coping, that I'm really struggling,
Yeah.
and asking for help, for support, shifting away from that blame, blame the other person, or shaming them, but being able to, like you say, be vulnerable and say, I'm just really struggling. How can we move forward together? I really need support
Yeah.
from you. And sometimes that can be really hard when you're hurting.
Sure.
And also, thinking about if you haven't been able to regulate yourself in the moment and things have become quite difficult, and there has been that blame and a really difficult argument, you're kind of going back in there for more, not being able to regulate yourself in the moment. And then, giving yourself permission then to be vulnerable and to go back in, and be the first person and say, I'm sorry.
Yes, to take responsibility
Yeah.
for our actions, and to essentially come clean, right? Yeah.
I think we both really love this idea of this reset. There is
Yes.
always possibility for a reset. And I think when you can bring yourself back to, why am I in this relation space with this person? Do I want to be here? And how do I want to be able to move forward from this?
Yes.
Or go back to where we were before.
Yes.
That there's always that possibility of reset. And I think when you are able to be clear about what your hopes are for that relation space, with that relationship, with that person in that relationship, then that can enable you to let go of the blame, of the things that were said.
Yes. Yeah, I think that knowing that there is opportunity for reset automatically brings hope, right? Because even when we're going through hard times, we know in our minds that we can reset. And so that in itself is hopeful. And I think that that in itself enables the relationship to be stronger.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
So, there's so much in that, isn't it? And, I think just to sort of highlight, I suppose, and invite our listeners to really think about, what do you do already that works? When you think about your reset,
Yes. Yeah.
what is it that you do to reset? And how might, from us sharing this with you today, how might you do that differently? Might you take away from listening to this paragraph today in terms of moving forward in your relation spaces and being able to reset in these difficult times? Anything that you would add to that, Vicky?
Sorry, Tara, I didn't hear that last question.
Anything that you would add to that?
No, I think what you've just said is beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Take care of each other. Bye.